It's always great to see the St Kilda Film Festival, and especially now that we're back to a more in-person sort of approach, which is great to see. And it's my great pleasure to be speaking to the director of St Kilda Film Festival, Richard Sowada. Richard, pleasure to talk to you again.
Yeah, look, thanks for having me on, Peter. It's always great to talk movies, as you know.
Absolutely. So tell me about the challenges this year after last year's was pretty much online, transitioning now to a more hybrid sort of approach this year.
Yeah, well, 2020, of course, we were just completely knocked out because of COVID. So we were completely online. Last year, we managed to squeeze about 4 sessions in, I think, before we were again crushed by COVID, which was quite interesting for us because after the 2020 experience, we designed the event knowing that we could be on a tram on our way to the venue in the morning and have been shut out by, 6 o'clock that night based on the health advice of literally the day. So we designed it in that very modular way. So, and we were ready. So when we were knocked on the head in last year with the event, we were ready we'd already flicked the switch actually to move quite quickly into the online world. So that worked very well for us. And then for 2022, because of course, when we're forming the budget for the event, like last year, we had no idea what the health situation was or what things would be. So the City of Port Phillip, who funds the event primarily, were kind of funded a hybrid event. So we started designing the event with looking at if it should all, go south, we would still be able to run an event online. Fortunately, as we all know, the way things have turned out, we are able to present the event completely in real life. But look, the experience of working in the online environment was a really, really important one for us, and one that we should, and any festival should, continue to apply to their event. One of the important things is that audiences live in a different place now than even what they did even pre-COVID. And it's not in the strategic interest of a film festival or a cultural event to suddenly go back to, and I'd say this probably about culture and society at large, to go back to the way that you were, because actually not everything in the way that you were was necessarily a good thing or could be better. So exploring audiences in the digital realm and in the physical realm is something that we have to do. It's just something that you have to explore as a curator and as an event administrator and manager as well. So for us, the choice was quite simple. The online event this year is very different to what it was last year. Like the online event last year was replicated, was taking the physical world and replicating it in the online one. But this year, the programs are quite different online to what they are in the physical world. But to cut a long story short, it's very important for us to continue to explore that online space, both technically and in terms of reaching audiences as well, and so for our audience development. And I would say one of the important things about the online environment as well is not only does it expand our audiences, because it really did, by tens of thousands actually over the last couple of years, but on a more personal level, some of these films are really, they're personal films. They're about things like gender. They're about, people's relationship to culture and community and that sort of thing. And to have them go out to places, and this might sound like I'm over-egging it or something, but for people in regional and remote locations who, for instance, may be struggling with questions of gender or race or culture, for them to see films made by other people on those subjects and realize that they're actually not alone in those struggles and those questions, for me is a really, really important personal thing to do. And that, if anything, is a reason to be online, is to take those voices to people that may not be able to avail themselves to hearing those voices. So that's an important thing too. So that's fundamentally where we're at. I really like it. I like being in the online world. It's really great. I love being in the physical world as well. There's two different powers at play. And it's a very good way to develop skills and connect with audiences in a very direct way.
Absolutely, I agree with you. I think that's a great explanation, I suppose, of the brave new world that we're now in. So very good. Now, we should mention the St Kilda Film Festival is on from the 27th of May to the 5th of June. And there are a number of different events and so on that's happening. But of course, the key issue is the 100 best short films. And the best of that, of that 100 films will be eligible to qualify for the Academy Awards, which is fantastic. Tell me about this year's challenges in getting these short films after the last couple of years with COVID affecting us so much and so on, and whittling it down to the 100.
Well, it's actually less than 100. And this was one of our things that we needed to confront when we were programming the festival, because as I said, you know, we were primarily looking at an online event. That's how the council worked out the budget for the festival. So we didn't have the luxury of working in the physical world as much as what had been previously before COVID, simply because the money wasn't there in the budget. It's expensive to work with venues and to mount things in the physical world. So we actually stripped back the 100 a little bit. So we're sitting at around 72 films instead of the usual 100, which actually is quite a good thing. It certainly forced some very hard decisions on from my perspective as the festival director. And we could have quite easily programmed 100 should things have worked out that way. And potentially we might do that in 2023 and beyond. But we've got about 72 titles now. But the way that worked was, I look at them all. We had around 600 entries for this year, which was more than last year. I look at them all, but we have a selection panel as well. I go to the selection panel when I want to gauge someone else's opinion of a film, because there are so many that are just like, you know what, I know it's not my taste, and I know this is not geared for me. It's geared for someone much younger or sometimes much older, but you know, I'm pushing that end of the market. So I do look at what the selectors say and take their advice very seriously. But the quality of the works, like it's interesting, Peter. There were not many films that were COVID related directly, and so that was a big question that we had before we started looking at entries. It's like, I wonder what kind of impact COVID is going to have on the creative output of the Australian screen sector. And there wasn't many. There was a few, and there's one or two that in the program that are directly COVID stories. But I think it was seen more in the kind of films that were being made rather than the themes of the movies. The films themselves were much more ensemble than potentially previous years, so much smaller casts, obviously, particularly in terms of Sydney and Melbourne, dictated to by social distancing and the capacity of actually getting out and making movies. Films from Western Australia were very different, of course, because there's no such thing as COVID there, and it wasn't for 2 years. So they were still much more blue sky, open type movies, which Western Australian cinema is known for. So there was much closer stories and much more community-minded stories, and stories really about much more intimate personal relationships and relationships with things that were very close to people, like literally locations that were very close to people and that sort of thing. So there's quite strong emotional content in the titles. And there's a lot of, I think, script is probably something that has really come to the surface, like the value of a good script, and writing in that intimate kind of a way where words are very important. So that was most definitely something that came through in the kind of films. And also the in terms of relationships, there was a lot about adult family relationships, the dynamic between partners, and particularly with regard to domestic violence and that side of things. So voices from women were very, very strong across all the call for entries, whether they're in the festival or not. It was like a very discernible voice that was bigger than in previous years. And I would probably say the same thing about First Nations and Indigenous voices as well. They were very at the front, very high quality, and you know, in greater volume that you would see in previous years, which is an interesting, those two things are very interesting in themselves, in that those voices that have had difficulty in over many years in surfacing themselves are really right at the front. So that was a really interesting chain of events.
Very interesting to hear that, Richard. It's it's interesting the shift and the focus and of communities coming to the fore that have not been as represented before as well before. So that is so interesting. Now we should mention the opening night is on the 27th of May at the Astor, and I noticed you've programmed 8 films there, which I'm looking forward to seeing, although I have seen one of them. And will it be a special celebration, as in hosted in a particular way?
Well, I'm not quite sure what you're getting at there, Peter, but it will be. Like last year, we managed to squeeze in an opening night in the flesh at the Astor. And I think it was the first time in a couple of years, the first real film thing that had happened here in Victoria, in Melbourne. So it was enormously successful. So we're basically mirroring that. The event will take place at the Astor, the beautiful Astor screen. There's almost up to 1,000 people that the Astor can accommodate, which is phenomenal. Last year we had very close to that, and it was just great. We utilise the entire venue, the auditorium, and the foyers, of course, for the after party and a function that we're doing beforehand as well. We have live entertainment, DJ and that sort of thing, and the usual cavalcade of stars at the opening, Peter, as you know. It's such a fun night. It's got that real St. Kilda vibe. You know, it's very welcoming. Tickets are selling very well, which is very heartening. Tickets across the entire festival are actually selling really super well. It's going to be a big night. It's a big week for us. So us behind the event have to keep ourselves pretty. It's always a fun big night. And the opening night films, as you know, the opening night selection of any film festival is the hardest to program. There are so many different sensibilities and people, you know, stakeholders with the event and all that sort of thing that are part of the whole thing. But I'm really, really super pleased with it. Usually I keep myself up at night thinking about, oh my God, did I do it right? You know, oh, that shouldn't have been there, and you know, that sort of thing. But this time around, no, I'm really happy with the balance. It's a really good balance of documentary and drama and comedy and animation, a good dose of politics. For anyone that knows my kind of programming style, you'll always see that. I think there's enough in there to make people, you know, when they're looking at the works, go, you know what, I wasn't expecting that, and that's the whole thing. So yeah, I'm really super pleased with the way that it's come together, and really looking forward to the event. And if anything is if the ticket sales are anything to go by, my God, it's going to be a really crackerjack night. There's no question.
Excellent news. I think what I was alluding to, whether you had a very special host or comedian or someone who's going to set off the night at the opening night.
Well, that is, I don't know if it's much of a secret, but yes, we do. Yes, we do. And it's a long-time friend of the festival. And yes, you can go to the website and have a look at that, and get your tickets there as well. But we've just confirmed Minister Foley as well, actually, who's our local member. He's a great long-time friend of the festival too. I like him a lot. He's a big supporter of the arts as well.
Okay, look forward to all of that. It should be great. Now you've got a number of strands and special events happening, obviously documentary and drama showcase and animation, but I notice you've got, for example, In Conversation with Kelton Pell and Jack Charles. That sounds like a very interesting event.
Oh, yes. I'm a long-time fan of Kelton Pell. He's a First Nations filmmaker based in WA. I actually saw One Night the Moon back when it was released, and I toured with the movie Through the Bush with Chris Hayward, who was also one of the stars of the film as well. The music is written by Paul Kelly. It's a wonderful musical directed by Rachel Perkins. Paul Kelly's also in the movie. It's a 60-minute musical, First Nations musical, basically. Very, very unusual, very lovely to look at. And Kelton, he's a phenomenal actor and a phenomenal performer. He's well known for quite a number of TV and cinema roles, but he's got such a great presence, and he's a very forthright speaker. So and this will be taking place at the Esplanade Hotel. So we also have, as part of that session, a series of First Nations musicians that the City of Port Phillip is mentoring. It's in their early part of their career. So it's a full day of music and discussion. So we'll be showing One Night the Moon. Kelton will be there with Uncle Jack Charles emceeing the event. Uncle Jack I've worked with on a couple of occasions, particularly when I was working at Acme. He's something else. Everyone knows Uncle Jack and knows of Uncle Jack, but he's really something else. And him with Kelton, and they both know each other. In fact, Kelton, when I was talking with Kelton about this with our First Nations cultural, programmer, Fred Geisha, when we were talking to Kelton, he said, "Oh, can we get Uncle Jack? Can we get Uncle Jack to MC the event?" And of course, we wanted to, and we did. So that will be a really awesome event at the Esplanade Hotel. The bar will be open, music will be on. We're trying to egg Kelton on to play and sing a couple of tunes while he's there. So we'll wait and see about that. But yeah, that's quite an honour actually to be associated with that event and with Kelton as well. He's a really fantastic guy and he can really talk.
Sounds great. Now, I'm always intrigued with international film festivals or curated screenings. And I noticed you've got a Scottish Documentary Institute screenings and Obu Short Film Festival. Tell me about those two.
Well, Obu is Melbourne's sister city in Japan, or a sister city of, not Melbourne necessarily, but the city of Port Phillip. So we have a long relationship with the city of Obu. They run a short film festival, the Obu Short Film Festival. It's a pretty compact event. Their event runs over a weekend, but over the last couple of years, we've been working with them. I really like working with them. Last year, actually, they asked us if we could recommend an Australian short film that they could screen. And we recommended a film centered around disability called Groundhog Night. I don't know if you saw it,
oh, yeah.
but it's hilarious. So we sent that to them and they loved it. They absolutely loved it because there's all this discussion in it about dildos and sex toys and all kinds of things. When they were subtitling it in Japanese, or the Australian slang with regard to these objects and these kind of acts, it was really hilarious. They kept emailing me back saying, "Oh, it's called this in Japanese, and we're going to do it like this and that." They had a real blast with that. And so this year we've got a number of films in an OBU program. I think there's about 5 of them, which are programmed and curated by the OBU Short Film Festival. Some of them are, I would probably classify them as featurettes. They run more than 45 minutes, but they're really fantastic. For those of you who are fans of Japanese cinema, there's a very different sensibility in Japanese cinema, particularly in comedies. They're really great to watch. They're really fresh. We love working with OBU. And then the Scottish Documentary Institute, they approached me very early on, actually, about what it is that they do and the work that they produce, which is from emerging filmmakers. And it suits us. I love documentary, as you know, Peter. It's like my thing. I enjoy it very much. I really love supporting new and emerging filmmakers and giving them the opportunity to screen their works. So when this came along, and there's two programs of their films, when this came along, it's like, well, of course, this just fits straight into what it is that we're wanting to do and wanting to encourage. So yeah, it was a real pleasure to include those films in the online program, and there's quite a few of them, and hopefully we'll continue to work together. So that was a really enjoyable thing to do, and working with these international organisations and events, it just opens so many doors for everybody. It's really great.
Excellent, excellent. I mean, there's so many different strands. I mean, we can't go through them all. And I noticed that you've got the awards night online.
Yeah, that was, we toed and froed with that quite a little bit. We, in-person events like that are really great. They're very important. One of the things we found actually over the last couple of years that we had to really still think about COVID and think about lockdown, like what might happen. And last year particularly, we had a lot of winners who were from interstate, and obviously virtually none of them could be here. So we had to think about that with the logistic of the opening night, of the closing night, just what that might mean. So we decided to put it online again this year, despite the fact that we could potentially do it in the real world, but it was only ever a potential, maybe this, maybe that. So online is where we can reach larger audiences. We can make sure all the filmmakers are involved. And then we can look at what we do with the closing night at for 2023 and beyond. But we're meeting with the judges this weekend to find out what their deliberations are. I don't vote on any of the films for the awards or the closing night or anything like that. So we have 3 judges who look at those movies. So looking forward to what they say, but it will be an online event, and it's lots of fun. I MC it, so hopefully it will be lots of fun. Yeah, it's a good way of being able to include all the filmmakers and talk to everyone nationally with the event. And the winners are able to be they're Oscar qualifying, which is a fantastic thing for the filmmakers. And look, just from a personal side of things, I just love being associated with the Academy. It's just so much fun, and it's a whole other thing. It's a whole other dimension. It's a next level. And they are really great to deal with as well. Yeah, it's just a really fun and enjoyable thing. And for filmmakers, it's a very, very important thing too.
Absolutely, no, I agree, and it's great that you're doing it that way. And we should also mention there's an in-person industry event, which is such an important part of the St.Kilda Film Festival. Yeah,
look, it is. So what we're trying to do, and the big picture, the Professional Development Day has been part of the festival for time and memoriam, really. But I'm really working really hard to make that big picture event, the Professional Development Day, like an important event for filmmakers and screen culture. So what I've done with it, it's not 101 discussion about, you know, how to get into the industry and that sort of thing, although that is there. It's quite, I've been building quite an intelligent and critical, what I hope to be intelligent and critical approach to the screen sector, to show and demonstrate career opportunities for new and emerging filmmakers, and for them to network with other filmmakers and develop collaborations and that sort of thing, but also to actually be really critical about the industry and look at the industry in a critical way. Is this the kind of industry that we want? How do we change it if we want to? How do I change it if I want to, speaking as a filmmaker? Like where is it going? And how can I get there? How can I be part of a movement? How can I avail myself to the traditions of screen culture and the screen sector in Australia? Where is my place in this? And how do I build the networks? So this is the kind of thing that I'm approaching the Professional Development Day. There is a whole lot of hands-on workshops and that sort of thing, like makeup and prosthetics, working with guns and ammunition, which after what happened in the United States last year is just like, you have to be thinking about those kind of things, but kind of that they're also strangely fun to do. Just by the way, genre films particularly, you know, they're always part of the mix, and working with guns and weapons are part of that. We've got sessions looking at new kind of technological workflows, like things like the Dream Screen that Clayton Jacobson has, you know, those LED screens that they shoot The Mandalorian and those kind of things on. They're incredible and have just changed the flow of the production process. Working with Michaela Banas on things like intimacy on screen. How does a director work with their actors in, you know, quite what can be a difficult area? But, you know, those discussions are very important, and figuring that out. How to work with First Nations people in Indigenous protocols and filming on country, whether they're in the bush or whether the metropolitan area. All those things, you know, they're really important things, super interesting things too. Yeah, so that's kind of the zone. Everything is free on the Professional Development Day. I like to think of it as like a film school just jammed into one day, a year of film school in one day. But I'm really super happy with the big picture day. It's great for filmmakers. It's great for the general public. Like I said, it's all free. If you're interested in cinema at all, just come along. It's really great. You don't have to be a filmmaker, which is an interesting thing in itself. But yeah, I'm very pleased with the big picture Professional Development Day. It's you know, high concept, and I think it really works. And I like working that way.
Excellent stuff. And I mean, there's so many interesting strands and parts of this year's St Kilda Film Festival. And if people go to stkildafilmfestival.com.au, they'll be able to get the full details.
Yep, absolutely. We're updating the website all the time, but the program is there. There's lots of opportunity. We've tried to keep the price point and the ticket points as low as we possibly can, to be as inclusive as we can. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it very much. Yeah.
Excellent stuff. I'm certainly looking forward to it, and I'll see you at opening night. So it sounds great. And Richard, last question, and you know what I'm going to ask you. Have you seen anything of late that has impressed you?
Oh, I've been watching a lot of new films for a film festival that I also do within WA. So there's a lot of things like that. But I did go, the last film that I went to see, which I think is really, it's outstanding. It didn't always get me, but it's and I'm going to get the title wrong, Peter. You're going to have to correct me. All Things Everywhere All at Once.
Oh, Everything Everywhere All at Once. Yeah.
That's it.
Yep.
That's it. Look, my son, who's 17, he's seen it 4 times at the movies already. He can't get enough of it. It didn't always get me, as Swiss Army Man didn't get me as well all the time. But you have to reward the ambition. You have to reward the conceptual framework and the world that they built. you have to reward the just the. I mean, it's not a low budget movie necessarily, but it's just got that it's not a sub level, because I don't want to downsell it, but it's just got a different. It's just got a different approach, which I really loved, and I think cinema at the cinema needs much more of that. And I really take my hat off to those filmmakers, the Daniels, and that film. So yeah, that'd be the one.
I absolutely endorse that. I think it was a terrific film, and the concept was just superb. So yeah, excellent stuff. And of course, what else is superb? The St Kilda Film Festival, May 27th to the 5th of June, stkildafilmfestival.com.au. And we've been speaking to the director of the St Kilda Film Festival, Richard Sowada. Richard, as always, thanks so much for talking with me.
Oh, it's a real pleasure, Peter. I'll see you on the opening night. I can't wait.
Will do. All the best.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.